Hello again. Um, I'm going to be talking about the Sparks today, and they were a really good team last year, and I'm so excited. I'm actually more excited about my guest who's on here, Stephen Trinkwald. He's all around WNBA Twitter. You probably recognize his cat avatar, and you might know him better as the host, producer, editor of the new podcast called The Double Down that he does with Eric Nemchock, which I would 100% recommend. I love it. If you really like what I have on my podcast and like the kind of in-depth breakdowns of the teams and what will happen in the season whenever that is, go to their podcast. It's called The Double Down. Yeah. So Stephen, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me back.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely love having you. Definitely love having you here. So, yeah, how's it going with the Double Down? Like, I'm curious. How like you like doing the pod and stuff?
It's going great. Eric is a great co-host. He's a wealth of knowledge on the league. And, a lot of our content so far has been sort of team overviews, but we've mixed it up a little bit. We've got a redraft coming out soon. We recently reviewed like a WNBA finals game from about a decade ago. So yeah, I'm having a ton of fun.
Yeah, it's so good. You guys have stuff out there on the Sky, the Connecticut Sun, the Wings. I think that's it for now, maybe.
We did Atlanta as well, and then Indiana will come out this weekend.
Okay, yeah, it's really good stuff, guys. Like I would not like. It's a great podcast. I love listening to it. I have to listen to it like more than once sometimes just to like make sure I'm getting all the numbers and stuff. And for me, that's super fun. So hopefully y'all will go over there. They also have a Twitter page. So, yeah, let's, before we really dive deep into the Sparks, I want to give a little bit of an overview, give people a bit of a refresher of the LA Sparks. So last year, they placed third. They went 22-12. Their offensive rating was fourth in the league at 101.6. Obviously, that's still way behind the Mystics, who were incredible, but with like 115 as their offensive rating. But I digress. And third in defensive rating at 98. So they had a positive net rating, which is great. I think they had a really great season, and then they did not have a really good postseason. They got a bye in the first round and then got swept by the Sun in a really sad, like it was such a yikes, 3-game sweep that they had against the Sun. So that was kind of how their season ended. It wasn't great, but they were a great team, and I'm excited what they have coming for 2020. Anything else for like a short little overview like that you think is worth mentioning?
Sure. It was a little bit of a weird year for them last year. A lot of this we'll get into shortly, but they were the only team in the W last year to finish in the top four in both offense and defense. You mentioned that they finished third. I thought they probably were the third best team in the league. I did expect them to beat Connecticut, but obviously that did not happen. Of course, the weird ending of their season where they kind of finished the season out in a college gym in Long Beach. So a weird year overall for a very good team.
Yeah. What do you think? Did they have like a specific style that you saw them playing on either end of the ball, and some things that they were really good and really bad at that really stuck out to you at all? Because I definitely struggled to find stuff here, but it wasn't. It's there, but it's very. They were the third best team, so they had a lot of good things happening. So I'll give it to you to discuss that.
Yeah, sure. I thought they had pretty good ball and body movement. Their assist percentage wasn't great. I think they were in the bottom third of the league in terms of assist percentage, but I thought they had good body movement, good cutting with the two Agumakays in particular. They like to get out and run. They were third in transition frequency, only seventh in efficiency there, but that's definitely a trade-off I'm willing to take. As I talk about all the time on the Double Down with Eric, being a mediocre transition team in terms of your efficiency, like if you're still able to get out and run, it's just such a more it's such a high efficient play compared to like a half court offense. So being third in efficiency is awesome there, and they really like to get out and run. So they ran a ton of pick and rolls. A lot of that kind of resulted in, the roller. They were tied for second in pick and roll frequency. So like to get it to, Kalani Brown, Neko Gumake, Shania Gumake, didn't really finish the play with the ball handler too much, or, kicking it out to the wing from the pick and roll. But, as you were saying, they were kind of middle of the road in just about every other category there. So, last in free throw attempt rate. Would love to see that come up this year, but, I have my doubts. Anything you kind of wanted to add offensively before I maybe talk about what I saw from their defense?
I think, transition offense, they were fine. I guess, I only have things on defense really to say here. I mean, they were good with putbacks, and that's kind of like the only thing, but it's just kind of like, not really too much worth mentioning. But I'll say it. I think Chene was really good at that, so I'll give her a little plug there. So why not? I think defensively they struggled in the transition. That's what I think I noticed most when I looked at Synergy. They were 8th in the league, so that wasn't great. But I'll let you talk about defense now. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you mentioned that. I think I had they were 9th in efficiency in transition defense, and then 6th in frequency. So, not amazing there, but they were the number 1 half court defense. So that's a plus. Number 1, both in guarding the pick and roll ball handler and the roller. I think they maybe were the beneficiary of a little bit of shooting luck. They tied for the 3rd highest 3-point attempt rate, and allowed the highest proportion of those catch and shoot opportunities to be open threes. But they, their defense or opposing offenses ranked 7th in efficiency on those shots. So definitely fortunate there, as I mentioned. They were pretty good at forcing opposing turnovers, and I think their defense was really good at kind of shrinking the floor defensively, knowing who to help and recover off of in those half-court situations. And they had a very, I guess, malleable defense in terms of, both of their starting bigs could really guard either big on the other team. They would kind of switch it up a little bit on pick and roll. They would either hedge hard or switch the ball action, the screen action if it was Neko Gumake guarding the big, or play a more conventional drop style in most other situations. But I think what I was alluding to before, just that ability to really kind of know where the weak points in the opposing offenses were and sort of be able to help and recover off of that spot really kind of propelled them to the number 1 half-court defense.
Yeah, I remember listening. I don't know if you've listened to this podcast, but it's on the Winsider like network, podcast network. It's the Sparks review or something like that. I definitely remember those two guys talking about how the Sparks were struggling with guarding a 3-point line. I think that's a really hard thing to measure. Those guys are really great at what they do, and they're with the team a lot. So I really do kind of trust them there. But, it's kind of hard. I find it hard just on some things that I've read. It's hard to, like, the luck of the ball just going in the hoop correctly. It's just you can't really control that on defense regardless of, how good you play perimeter defense. Obviously, it's affected. Opposing teams' 3-point percentage is affected by your defense, but also there's an element of luck. So that's just something I heard around.
If I could just jump in, I think most I guess modern conventional wisdom kind of leans towards like you affect a lot more like the proportion of shots that are threes that your opponents take, more so than like the percentage that they go in. So, Vegas, they were the best team in the league and they did allow the highest 3-point attempt rate, but typically just in terms of like how your defense affects 3-pointers, it's more so like the proportion of shots that they take more than like how frequently they hit them.
Gotcha. So it's better to have, the opposing teams have the fewer, like even just a fewer number of 3 points taken than the percentage that team has.
Yeah, as long as those shots aren't being turned into layups. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, which actually would be kind of hard to measure, but so I think that's kind of a good little overview there. So there wasn't that much that they had to improve on. What did we say? I forgot to list it in my head that they needed to work on. I don't know, their transition defense a little bit, and what else did you say that they needed to work on?
Transition defense, for sure. I think I mentioned that they we're not very good at getting to the free throw line, but I don't see that improving this season as we can get to. I think the number one thing that they needed to improve on is just playing 5 competent offensive players at the same time on the floor, and that's something that they're actually able to do this season.
Great, cool. So let me just go quickly over the off season that they had, and what the movements were, who left, who came, things like that. So at the most simply put, when we're not thinking about the draft, the people that were on the team in 2019 that are no longer on the team now are Elena Beard. She retired in January. Then you had Marina Mabry more recently gone over to the wings, and then Vadiva is not playing this year. And then they gained Anigwe, Augustus, Tolliver, Gulich, and Sykes. So that is a lot of new players, 5 new players. I don't know what percentage that is out of 12, but it's almost half. So yeah, I think that's actually, yeah, I'll just say more specifically in February, they got Christy Tolliver. Later in February, they got they sent Kalani Brown over to Atlanta, and in return, they got Marie Gulich and Brittany Sykes, which I'm really excited to hear your thoughts on that trade. And then they traded Marina Mabry for a second-round pick next year in the draft. They got Simone Augustus, which was surprising to everybody. Least surprising to me. I'm the least outraged, I think, because I wasn't really following the league when there was a big rivalry between the Sparks and the Lynx. So I'm not offended, but I'm sure I know other people are. Yeah. So yeah. And then they got Anigwe, and they traded over a second-round pick in 2021 and got a third-round pick from 2021. Interesting. And then their draft, luckily for us, they don't have any of the draftees on their team right now, so we don't need to go into waters that we're not as familiar with, which is great. So I'll just read out the names one more time. We got Anigwe, Augustus, Gray, Gulich, both Agumake's, Parker, TRP, Sykes, Tolliver, Weiss, and Rakana Williams. So that's 12. That was pretty fast, but y'all can go back and record this and listen to it again, or just look at it on WNBA website. Anything else you kind of want to add to that overview? I know I went pretty fast there.
No, I think we can just kind of get into.
Yeah. What do you think the starters are going to be this year? Let me actually, before we say that, who the starters were in 2019. So you had Chelsea Gray. I don't think there's much going to be changing there. Then you had Rakana Williams starting sometimes, but she missed 10 games, so that sucks. But then you had Weiss also coming in at the 2, then TRP at the 3, NECA, and then Shanae and Candace kind of splitting the starting minutes at in that last position because Candace was hurt at the beginning of the season. So yeah, who do you think the starting 5 are going to be this year?
Well, I think 4 of those slots are pretty well locked in, right? Chelsea Gray and Tolliver in the backcourt, Candace Parker and Neko Gumake in the front court. So,
yep.
I think the competition really comes down to who is starting at small forward. And, I think they have a lot of options there. Brittany Sykes, you mentioned before, TRP. Sydney Weiss maybe could give you some minutes at the 3. Rakana Williams, a little bit smaller. So I think in terms of starting, I think you probably do want to start Tiara Ruffin-Pratt because, as a one-on-one defender and as maybe the most of an offensive liability, maybe aside from Brittany Sykes, of those 4 players that are kind of realistically up for that position, she just kind of matches best with the starters in terms of like that skill set of being an elite one-on-one defender. Like that brings you a little bit less value when you're coming off the bench because there aren't as many elite offensive players to kind of stick a one-on-one defender on, and her offensive weaknesses are able to be hit a little bit more playing against 4 other elite offensive players. So I think she should probably be the starter there, but I don't think I would maybe finish most games with her at the 4. I mean, at the 3. What do you think?
Yeah, this was obviously the position that we were going to struggle with most. I I tentatively put Sykes there because I definitely see what you're saying, and I never would have thought of this. Not taking advantage of putting TRP on the best players, the best offensive players who are starters. So that makes a lot of sense to me. But I'll give you my argument that I put Sykes first. I think you can optimize Sykes' abilities on offense more if you have shooters around her. I think um, so. Sykes, needs to be in the paint, and if you don't have space in the paint with people coming on, with the players coming off the bench, like Chine and who actually can start is sort of stretching the floor now. But Anigwe and Gulich, I think that's going to be hard for her to deal with. So that's why I'm kind of putting her in the front as a starter. But I I think she needs that spacing, and I think if you put her in the second line, like in the on the bench, like coming in as a second team, she's not going to be effective for you on not as effective for you on offense, and then like she's not really contributing on defense either. So it's like, what is she? Why is she on the court, kind of thing, So that's why I put her there. I unless you saw that she had good defense, I don't see her as a particularly good defender. She's athletic enough, I would think, but yeah, I like your reasoning a lot for TRP, but I'm not, I would be cool either way with this. I'm not happy, but
To be
it's
honest with you, if I can just jump in, like
yeah.
I think Sykes should probably play the least amount out of the four players I just outlined. Like I don't really see kind of what she sort of brings to the table. You did mention she gets to the paint pretty well. She took 40% of her shots from within 5 feet. That's pretty good for a perimeter player. Finished okay in that range, but her shot profile is a little iffy for me. She takes a lot of long twos off the dribble, and she's not a good mid-range shooter at all. Maybe some of that was just Atlanta's well-documented spacing problems last year. And she can be an aggressive transition player, but I don't think she quite really has the touch to finish at full speed over traffic in transition. I don't think she's a good decision maker. She's a pretty decent straight line driver getting to the rim, with the right hand, but I don't think she really has any sort of moves off the bounce. So I just think she takes the most off the table in terms of the four options that LA has, that they could, realistically play here, that could give you like wing minutes.
Yeah, sure. I could see her getting the fewest number of minutes, and I think, yeah, I just like, I think people need to guard her, so she'll help a little bit with spacing in that way, more so than TRP. But then again, yeah, I'm okay with putting TRP first. I'm not, as I said, I'm not, like jumping for joy for either of them. But even with TRP, to add to your argument, is like she's actually she shot 34% from three. Obviously, like I saw that one post that you put up a couple days ago of I think it was actually a highlight, not a highlight, but a one play that Chelsea Gray was in when she shot, and like it TRP was just on the wing, and I don't know who her defender was. Like, I didn't see a fifth person. I mean, they must have been under the basket doing something, but it was like she has so much space. So yes, that 34%, she's real, and it's on 73 attempts. So that's something. That's a good amount. So she's very, very open, but I think teams are gonna have to sort of start guarding her, or might want to, because 34% is really not that bad. So I'll put TRP there. I'm pretty convinced. Yeah.
If I could just go off on TRP a little bit, because I did say that she should be starting, but I don't think she should be finishing games. I think she's just too much of an offensive liability there. You mentioned she had pretty good percentage last year. That was her first season in the league, cracking 33% from behind the line. 80% of her catch and shoot possessions are categorized as unguarded. And, unguarded is a term I would use to describe her offensive game. She is unguarded most of the time. She is kind of willing, maybe more than these other options, to make an extra pass, on the rare occasions that defenses actually rotate to her. But she just, she'll give you a little bit of finishing at the rim. I think her finishing actually probably boosted up her spot up numbers. I'm not sure if you saw when you were on Synergy earlier, but she was in the 84th percentile as a spot up player. And I think a lot of that was just kind of driving to the basket. So I just think, teams are able to shrink the floor a little bit too much with her in the game. And a lot of times I think, especially when you get down to kind of smaller and smaller sample sizes, like it almost matters more how you're being guarded than if you're actually making the shots, because if on those other 10 possessions that you're not taking the shot, if they're just not guarding you, everything is so much more difficult. So I think finishing the games, in most instances, I think I would go with Raquana Williams at the three. She is a little bit smaller, a little bit of a chucker probably, but I think she just gives you the best balance of offense and defense of any of these options.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know how good Williams is at defense. I mean, she's not known for it, but she's also an incredible 3-point shooter. So yeah, the three is definitely a question mark on this team, and I think that's where you're going to see the most advantage taken of the Sparks this year. I would say that is probably their biggest weakness. And then I think we can talk about this later. I think the other weakness that they'll have might be age. But I want to talk about more of the players first. Anything else you want to say about Sykes TRP? Actually, you know what? Let's keep talking about Sykes. What do you think? Like, how do you think of the trade? So it was the Sykes trade, and they also got Marie Gulich and Kalani Brown. So I actually, I'll go first on this one. I think, Sykes is the best player of those three. I don't think they were ever going to use Kalani Brown. They were giving Kalani Brown 13 minutes last year a game in 28 games that she played in, which I don't know how Derek Fisher found those minutes for her, honestly. But I think Gulich is not ever going to play. So, that's not really, going out on a limb there. I think she's going to be the 12th player on that bench. But yeah, I think Sykes, it's fine. But I don't know who won this trade, or if anyone won it or anyone lost it. It was just kind of like a meh kind of thing, I feel like, for both sides. I just don't really see the value in Kalani Brown, or I didn't see that much, nor in Gulich. And, Sykes is really a question mark. I think she's still pretty young, so I don't know, maybe she could turn it on. I don't know. What are you thinking about this trade and these players and how all of this is kind of fitting together?
Yeah, I think, what I'm going to say is an impossible question to ask, but I wonder how they would have considered doing this trade, like with more intel that maybe Maria Vadeeva wouldn't come over this season, because on the surface, when it happened, I did like this trade more for LA, because generally I just value wing depth a little bit more than big depth, especially for a team that already has, Shanae Agumike and Maria Vadeeva on the roster at times. So, I think I'm maybe a little bit higher on Kalani Brown than you. I think she can be a solid bench big. I don't think she's ever going to be a starting player, or at least a starting caliber center. But I think she can go to work on some bench units, get to the free throw line, use her body pretty well in certain situations. I agree with you that Marie Gulich should not play for this team. I hope she gets, just garbage minutes, if anything. But, I just hope, something about this situation works in Sykes' favor more so than Atlanta, because I just don't think there was too much to really like about what she actually produced on the court when she was in Atlanta.
Yeah, I think, like I've said this before on the podcast, where her and Hayes, I felt like were very, very similar players. They both really they couldn't shoot very well, and they needed to get to the rim, and there was just way too much going on near the basket for that team. So I thought that they really needed to get rid of one or the other. I think Sykes was slightly weaker. I mean, you have the only difference between Sykes and Hayes is Sykes can't use her left hand, and I think, or maybe it was Hayes. Oh, shoot. Well, now I don't remember. But, Sykes is younger, so there is time to develop her. And I guess, what I see from that trade is that Nikki Collin was like, I'd rather not try to develop her. So, I mean, I like watching highlights of Brittany Sykes. I think she's a very athletic player. But, yeah, hard to see how she's going to really contribute.
Yeah, she definitely does have plus athleticism, to be sure. So hopefully she can kind of harness that in a more positive way.
Yeah, for sure. I think I feel good about that. Let's talk about Tolliver. I yeah, why don't what do you think about Tolliver? Probably positive things, I hope. And what where is she going to fit in? How is this going to work?
I mean, I love Christy Tolliver. Like, she is one of my favorite players to watch. Probably the most versatile jump shot, along with Allie Quigley in a different way, to be sure, but probably, the most versatile jump shot in the game, just in terms of the different ways she can get her shot off, coming off screens, running the pick and roll, step backs, off the dribble, probably the best handles in the league.
Everything. Yeah, she's got everything.
She's an elite offensive player with the ball in her hand. She's an elite offensive player off ball. So, she was in the 99th percentile as a pick and roll ball handler last season, 88th percentile as a spot up player. So when you kind of bring that versatility to an already great offense, I mean, it's bananas. I can't believe that she signed back with LA. It's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's, we keep talking about, or in the WNBA world, we keep talking about diminishing returns on players. And this kind of player, you can't, like, if it's a player on the perimeter, I don't see, who's a very elite, let's talk about the offensive end, an elite perimeter player on the offensive end who can make their own shot. You can't have too much of that, I feel like, because they're not taking up each other's space. If they need the space in the paint, like I was saying with Sykes and Hayes, the bigs need that. A lot of bigs need that space, and so do both Sykes and Hayes. So it just gets clogged. Same with if you have too many bigs. We see that with Las Vegas, excuse me. And then even with spot up shooters who are just shooters, like not scorers, like pure shooters, I think there's more of a tendency to having a stagnant offense, but with shot creators, with scorers on the perimeter, I mean, it's just, you can't really have too many of those. So this team now has Chelsea Gray and Tolliver again, and it's just incredible. And they've definitely gone up on the list for me of placing, especially because of what happened to Las Vegas too. So it really solidifies that spot. So I'm really excited about Tolliver. She can do everything. Like you said, I don't really need to go over it. I mean, she and actually something I did want to bring up was just a lesson that I learned when talking about Tolliver, when I was like, yo, Leilani Mitchell's so bad, so good, sorry, and she's like not a downgrade for Washington, for when replacing Tolliver here, just when all of that was happening and developing. And then you came on Twitter and were like, yeah, but their shots are completely different. And I'm like, yes, that, and so, the numbers were sort of lying to me. And now I definitely remember that of oh, but how are they getting the shots? And Tolliver is a very, very efficient shooter off the bounce, and probably a much more efficient shooter not off the bounce. So, even if there's an issue with her age or something, which I think is a valid argument, I think if she has to take a step back and not do as much off the dribble, I think she'll be a fine spot up shooter as well, or a very good one actually. So I'm very excited for LA here. Your thoughts?
Yeah, and even just to kind of look within this same roster, like Sydney Weiss shot 36.6% from three last year. Christy Tolliver was at 36%, but Sydney Weiss is a straight standstill 3-point shooter. She just doesn't have the versatility of her shot. She can't come around screens. I don't think that upside of her jump shot is ever really going to come around, just due to sort of her front forward footwork, the way she kind of brings the ball across her body. So if you're kind of just looking at percentages, it really just doesn't tell the story of what Christy Tolliver brings to your offense, as a 3-point threat, being able to kind of do it in all sorts of different ways. And, not to kind of make the same point over and over again, but to be able to just have that pliability, to be an elite offensive player on the ball, or be able to space for, a Chelsea Gray who really kind of struggled to put up some of the same offensive efficiency in past seasons. And, Christy Tolliver, she's just always on the move. She's not a stationary basketball player. She's always using teammates for screens who maybe don't even know that they're setting screens. She's just really adept at finding the spot that makes it an easy pass or an open shot for her teammates to find her. So, you know, she's just a baller.
Honestly, yeah, she's great. I didn't ask you this before we started this, but like, are you concerned about her lack of defense? Is that Are you concerned at all with that, or not really?
No, I don't think so. You've highlighted pretty well before, maybe not on the podcast, but definitely, you know, on Twitter and on your Instagram. Like, elite offenses win championships in the WNBA much more than elite defenses do. And I still expect them to be a good defense, maybe with some weaknesses, but they still have two very solid defensive bigs. I think bigs are, you know, more significant factor to a good defense than guards are, at least, you know, a little bit. So I'm not really too concerned with her defense. If anything, I'm kind of concerned about maybe her being able to get to the rim. You know, she was at a way higher frequency last year than she really ever had been before that. You know, I think
That's surprising. Later in her career, she was going to the basket more.
Well, I think just, you know, the otherworldly spacing that Washington was able to provide last year that pretty much no other team, you know, maybe LA will be similar, but not even, I don't think so. You know, when other players are far from the rim, it's easy to get there. So, but to answer your question, no, I don't think my level of concern for her defense, you know, I'm not too worried about it, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I think she's just so good on offense that her defense like is gonna be sufficient. Like, it's not ideal, but like, it's not gonna be ideal. That's the fun of it.
And she's not like a can't defender, right? If anything, it's just like her size is a little bit limiting.
Right.
You know,
Right.
or I should say she's not like a won't defender. She is more of like a can't because of her physical limitations. But, you know, I think she's a smart, heady defender, you know, and there will usually be someone to kind of put her on.
Yeah, I think she'll be great. I mean, if you have someone like Tolliver who wants to play for you, you kind of have to say yes. And I think the only exception to that is when you're talking about someone like Elena Delle Donne and Emma Miesemann. Like, I think that's might be questionable about where you want to go. And Tebow clearly was like, hey, I'd rather have Emma than Tolliver. And I think that's also fair because Emma Miesemann's like 26, like she's pretty young. So maybe she's older than that. I shouldn't lie and talk about things I don't know about, but I am. So okay. So yeah, so I think maybe that's an okay trade-off, but like, you know, Elena Delle Donne's Elena Delle Donne. You're not getting rid of her ever. So I think that this is like the only time Tolliver will kind of get let go, at least right now. Or I don't know what happened years ago when she was in LA, but whatever. So yeah, what other people came onto the team? So let's talk about a player that has broken Newton's first law of physics, which is the law of inertia. I'm talking about Simone Augustus. You know, she was on the same team for her whole entire career for over a decade, and now she is on the rival team. So that's surprising to everyone. And I don't really see why that happened. I don't see how it really helped. Like, I don't see why Cheryl let her go. I don't think Cheryl wanted to, from what I understood in her podcast. But I don't really want to delve into that. So I will not. I don't know why I went there anyway. So, what do you think her role is going to be on this team? What was Fisher thinking? Do you think?
I don't know. I'm not very optimistic, to be quite honest with you. You know, obviously very limited by injuries last year and very ineffective when she was on the floor. You know, by all accounts, her worst season to be sure. And she's getting up there in age to the point where, you know, you wonder kind of how much she has left in the tank to give. And even kind of if she's able to do the things that she does well, you know, her game is predicated on being able to make tough contested 2-point jump shots. So, I mean, you know, even with the rest of their best players on the court last year and Simone on the court alongside them, you know, Fowles, Collier, and Sims, when they were on the court without Simone Augustus, they had like a +7 net rating. When those three players were on the court with Simone Augustus as well, they were -6. So, you know, I think at this point, obviously that's a super small sample size, but at this point, it's hard to see her factoring into, you know, significant playing time or at least minutes when it really matters.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, I mean, her whole game is predicated on her athleticism, and like, you know, what we were seeing last year in the 12-ish games that she played, and it was like she is not moving. And yeah, she was coming off injury, but like, ugh. I think where I was thinking maybe she could fit in, I'm not exactly sure who's going to be taking the ball up if Chelsea Gray and Tolliver are out. So maybe I don't know if you necessarily would even do that. Like, I think you would have one of them on the court all the time. So maybe Augustus could be a facilitator, which has never been her position. But like, what else is she gonna do? I mean, she can't, like, I think an older age player, if they could shoot the three, like they can just be like just a knockdown 3-point shooter, I think she'd be fine. She can't shoot the three really. She only had a mid-range game, which was awesome, by the way, but she can't really rely on that, as we've now said twice and now 3 times. So like, I think like, she can't shoot the three. I mean, she shoots a jump shot when shooting her three, which I find bizarre because she shoots at a line drive when she does that. And I'm like, I don't know. The form looks very weird when she's doing it from three because it just comes out like a bullet. So the trajectory is all off. Yeah, that's my spiel on her. Do you have more thoughts?
I mean, I guess just like even in that role that you were describing, like as an offensive initiator, you know, what is she bringing to the table at this point in her career that you couldn't get from the combination of like Sid Weiss and Raquana Williams? But, you know, in my opinion, those minutes that you were describing should never happen. Like 2 of their big 4 should be on the court at all time, except for, you know, when they're maybe resting players or you know, it's garbage time or something.
Yeah, I mean, I see her as number 11 on the bench. I never did this with any of the other of the other team overviews I've done of like ranking what spot they are. I don't think it really matters, but like what is she gonna do? I like, and I think that it just would have made so much more sense for her to stay in, like, if she's there for a leadership role, stay in Minnesota. Like, that's what I would think, because she's been there for years. She knows everything. You just have another coach that you're probably underpaying, you know, like, so I don't know, it just makes no sense. I don't know what's going on. I don't get it. But who knows what happens behind closed doors and things like that. Not saying anything bad happens, but I just don't know the negotiations. Any more on Augustus, or should we move on to the next kind of player?
Yeah, let's move on.
Cool. I'm saving the best for last, but we're not on the last one. So what do you think about the Anigwe acquisition? Well, actually, you know what? We can take this kind of 2 players at once, one of which is in your name on Twitter now with Maria Vadiva, who they lost. So I feel like they kind of, you know, they lost Vadiva, so they were like, okay, let's get Anigwe in here real quick. That's kind of how I'm seeing this. So I'll let you take it away with both of those players, however you want to kind of talk about it. I'm giving you the floor.
Oh, sure. Well, I think they're really going to miss something with Maria Vadiva. You know, she had an excellent second season last year. Very small sample size, but led the league in free throw attempt rate, even higher than the official leader, Tiara McCowan. So she was, you know, an elite offensive player off the bench, 94th percentile as a roller. You know, she can obviously finish around the basket, can space the floor as well. Didn't have great shooting numbers last year, but in a super small sample size. And even more so than that, as I kind of alluded to earlier, she's guarded as a floor spacer. So I think, you know, she's just so much better than any of the big options they brought in to replace her. And, you know, I think there's an outside, if maybe unlikely chance that she could have even given you more than Chiney Ogwumike will next year, or, you know, whenever rosters are complete. But, you know, I think they're really going to miss her. And in terms of Christine Anigwe, I kind of have a hard time seeing it. You know, I don't really know what the path is for Christine Anigwe to become a solid WNBA player. You know, I mentioned it on my show with Eric the other day, you know, very limited possessions, but as a center, she was in the 0th percentile defending post-ups. Like, that's, you can't do that. And you know, you maybe wouldn't know it from her usage, but just kind of watching her anecdotally, she's just like an absolute black hole. Like every time she touches the ball, she's just going to like close her eyes and throw it at the backboard. You know, she does get to the free throw line a pretty good amount. So that's a plus, but I mean, she had a 404 true shooting percentage. Think about how bad you have to be from the floor to have a 455 free throw attempt rate and still have a 404 true shooting percentage. Like, it's impressively bad shooting from the field. So,
Right.
she's a plus rebounder, but I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, she just I didn't see her on defense. I'm glad you did that because yeah, but on offense, young players. I feel like, and I saw this with the diva too, but less so. Of like they just throw it up there and really hope for the best because they're all like super tall. So like in other leagues, they're close to the basket. It's a pretty good percentage. It doesn't work here like that nearly as much. So I think she just looked very very young playing, and I don't like her as much as Vadiva, as you said. I think you had to bring, or Derek Fisher clearly wanted to bring someone else in as a big, because I mean Anigua is better than Gulic in some ways. It doesn't even, I don't, it's not great either way, but
I believe they call that damning with faint praise.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they're gonna do with her, but like, I think she just seems to. She's very athletic. She's more athletic than Vadiva, and so that's a plus. But I think she maybe relied on her athleticism too much when going through basketball, and so like now her athleticism can't carry her, and so it's not working. Whatever she's doing, it's not really working, and she's not contributing. So I don't know what she's going to do. I don't know how much she's going to contribute. I think they have a pretty good, she's going to get minutes though, because she's the fourth big, unless you think that Gulic is before her.
I don't think Gulic is before her, and I think Inigwe should probably play over Gulic.
Yeah.
In terms of Marie Gulic, like, I just don't see much from her as an NBA player. I just kind of want to read something quickly while we're on the topic. Offensively, Marie Gulic last year, 8th percentile as a roller, 5th percentile as a cutter, 2nd percentile off screens. It's so hard to find a player that's bottom 10 in 3 offensive categories. She's a solid offensive rebounder, but, I just don't really, much like Christina Nigwe, but to an even more extreme version, I don't understand what she is supposed to be good at. Like, what is the theory of Marie Gulic that she's bringing to a WNBA team? And, obviously age is a concern, but I don't know why either of these players should play significant minutes. Like, if you have just kind of 2 of the 2 Agwumakes and Candace Parker on the floor, like, that should suffice. I know that doesn't usually work like that on a lot of WNBA rosters, but you can get away with playing 3 bigs.
I mean, it's just I'm not really sure where this is going. I mean, I think Gulic was just in that trade to get Atlanta clearly didn't want her, so it's not like I doubt Derek Fisher was like, yeah, we were really looking to get Gulic on the roster this year. I just don't see that happening. Yeah, so I mean, do you think it's a big problem with the depth in the front court? So right now they have Nneka, Chiney, well, not in this order. Nneka and Candace probably starting. Then you got Chiney and then Anigwe and Gulic. I mean, there's obviously a huge drop off there. Do you think that this is going to be an issue for them or not really?
I mean, this is the dumb, simple answer, but it all depends on health, right? Like, if to balance 3 players between 2 positions, that shouldn't be that big of an issue. That's 30 minutes per game for your starters, and 22 to 20 for your backup player who's been a starter her whole career essentially. So, one injury, and maybe that's when you'll just kind of see, the net rating of certain lineups really plunge into the toilet. But if everyone remains healthy and Derek Fisher keeps his rotation to, say, 9 instead of 10 or 11, then, I think they can get away with not playing players who shouldn't be in a rotation at this point.
Yeah, I think if they can keep it to 9, with not having Augustus, Anigwe, and Gulic, like, they have a very, very good top 9 here. I think I agree with that. Yeah, that's true. So, like, okay, so what do you think? Do you think age is going to be an issue here too? Are you concerned? I mean, I don't know how you measure that, but it's very speculative. But it's something I'm sort of thinking about. So,
I guess overall, I would be concerned, maybe less about age, but overall team athleticism. I think they
mhm.
kind of just got ran off the court the last. Obviously, 2018 was like a one game playoff series, but they certainly looked like the less athletic team then. I mean, Connecticut just destroyed them last year, and it looked like they never really had a chance, to my surprise. So, um, you know, I guess athleticism would be a little bit of a concern, but what do you think?
I didn't think about the athleticism too much here, actually. So I'm just going to look down and see. Yeah, I mean, yes, I agree. I mean, I think Tolliver and Gray are pretty athletic, or Gray's just like big, and I don't know. It seems pretty athletic, a little bit slow, but um, and then Sykes is Sykes is very very athletic, but like it doesn't even like matter that much, because
Yeah, it
she's
doesn't materialize.
right. So I don't even know, like athleticism definitely matters, but if it doesn't matter, like then it doesn't matter. So I don't know. I'm a little bit concerned with age because I remember watching Candace Parker come back from her injury last year, and she just was so out of it. I'm concerned a little bit there. I mean, it obviously had more to do with injury than age, but I'm I think her and Tolliver are kind of the only problems. But now that I'm looking at it, like if if Candace is a little bit slower, she's still a great passer, and I think she can get those passes off. She's tall, and that also helps. And I think she shoots pretty well, and she doesn't need to shake people off of her to make space. Like she doesn't need to be making that much space for herself to get her shot off. And then Tolliver, as I said before, like if she can't, I don't think she can't move. Like she looked fine last year. I mean, other than when she actually was injured and just coming off of that injury, but she honestly looked like she can move pretty well. And as I said before, if she can't, she can just be a great spot up shooter. And I think that's a good spot to be in too when you're at the latter half of your career. So, I thought I was going to be concerned about the age, and I'm not. I mean, right, because yeah, I mean, Augustus is old, but she's not going to do anything anyways. The other weird thing that I found or that I realized was that I think 2020 is going to be Chiney's like third or fourth season in the league because she got hurt for 2 or 3 seasons. So maybe it's her fifth. Shoot, now I can't remember. But she really hasn't played that much, which is kind of surprising to me because she came into the league in 2014. So I don't really know what that means about her age exactly because that always mucks it up. Yeah, so she's been in the league 4 years.
But it'll be
I
her
don't know.
age 28 season. So, but right in the prime. If you're not considering the knee injuries, and I think last year was a little bit of an anomaly for Shanae Ogwumike. Like I would expect her to um, adapt to that bench role a little bit better in her second year in it. Her free throw attempt rate fell off a cliff last year. There's really no reason for that to sustain against bench players. Her own foul rate jumped way up last year. I think that was sort of a manifestation of her own frustrations. And she still managed to be plus efficiency as an individual offensive player, despite her true shooting percentage dropping like over 100 points or whatever it was. So, I think she's going to, and as you mentioned before, was still great on the offensive glass, as she always is, third in offensive rebound rate last year. She's been in the top 5 every year that she's played. So I expect her to bounce back, to be sure, and kind of adjust in that role a little bit better, especially, playing alongside hopefully Candace Parker a little bit more, a healthy Candace Parker with a little bit less of a dense space, less Kalani Brown, et cetera.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, I think she'll also do a little bit better this year. So anything else you want to say about LA specifically? I think right now I'm thinking about going on to where the teams are placing. So if there's anything you want to say before we get to that, now is the time.
Yeah, I think just overall, they're going to be a very good passing team. They're going to move ball and body very well. They're going to, I think, get to the rim pretty well. They're going to finish around the basket. So, I expect them to, as we'll get to, remain an elite offensive and, I guess, overall team.
Yeah. Cool. Any other topics that you want to go over? Actually, I should have asked.
No, it's okay. I mean, we didn't really talk about Neko Gumike that much, but
let's talk.
She's just one of those like elite players where she's so good, but there's still like not a ton to say about her, I guess.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like with her and Chelsea Gray, and Candace too. It's like I don't really know what to say about them other than like they're great. So like that's why I don't have real specific questions for them. I mean, Gray kind of feels like she fell off the wagon a little bit last year. I mean, she was still amazing and has just, I feel like she passes the ball behind her back more than she passes it normally. So she's amazing. I don't really know what to say about them, but I'm fine to talk about how great they are.
Well, I think, you had mentioned before we went on the air that you did want to touch on Gray a little bit. So I'll just kind of get into it. I think Chelsea Gray is the best point guard in the WNBA. I think she, maybe even more so than Vandersloot, like just provides high leverage assists to her teammates more than any other player in the W. And she did have, a well below her career norms type season in terms of her own individual like offense. But, a lot of that stemmed from poor 2-point shooting. She, did not take as many shots right around the rim. She went from 65% shooting on 24% frequency in 2018 to 61% shooting on 18% frequency. So just like didn't get there as much. And her mid-range shots in terms of frequency was like kind of right around the same area, but her percentage points in terms of making them dropped off 10%. So that's a pretty precipitous decline like year over year. And the one thing I would say that I actually have real concerns about with Chelsea Gray is just her free throw attempt rate continues to fall off a cliff. It's dropped, pretty much every year since she's become a regular rotation player in LA. In 2018, 243, last year, 159. So, overall, I think free throw attempt rate, as I mentioned briefly before, is a problem for this team. And I think it starts with Chelsea Gray, who, is the person that's really has the strength advantage on a lot of the people that are matched up with her and should be kind of using her body a little bit more, getting all the way to the rim.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I found was, I think between like 2017 and 2018, I think she lost like 30 pounds or something like that. So maybe I'm not, that would stop me from going to the basket as much. I feel like you can't, you're easier to move. You're easier to knock around. So maybe there's a little bit of fear there because of that. When I looked at her, but yes, that is definitely a concern. I totally get that. And it's weird that it's happening so early in her career, because I would think that happens after her peak, and maybe her peak was already, but I don't see that. That being the case. So that is surprising for sure. I looked at the synergy numbers of what her splits are to see what changed from last year. Her pick, she was more involved in the pick and roll by 4% of her attempts. So she did 30, 40 more pick and rolls as a ball handler. And she got worse. And other things didn't really change that much. Oh, from 2018 to 2019, she posted up. That's not significant. I lied.
With regards to her pick and roll, she was, you did mention she got worse. She was only in the 56th percentile, in terms of her own offense last year, but she was in the 75th percentile in pick and roll offense, including passes, so she definitely still is a plus pick and roll player, even if she's not, or even if last year she maybe wasn't scoring for herself in those instances as often.
Right. Yeah. So we'll see what happens.
And I do think,
yeah, go.
I was just going to say, I do kind of expect her to get all the way to the rim a little bit more this year, with increased spacing around her, playing with TRP maybe a little bit less, and playing with Tolliver and both Tolliver and Raquana Williams on the floor at the same time.
Yeah, that is a good catch. I would not have thought of that. Also, it looks like she did a lot more isolation this year. So maybe, I don't know, she's not as good high volume in isolation as we thought she was. That's also possible, but I don't know. It could have just been a down year. she's a great player regardless, even if she's getting more, like, she's not performing as well as she used to. The team itself isn't performing as well as it was in 2016 and 2017, you know? So it's, that's just, maybe that's part of that wave too. So we'll see what happens there. Okay, so we're getting lower on time. We're probably going to go over the hour, but let's talk about where they're placing this year and where other teams are placing. How are you approaching this? Because I kind of just went straight in order, and this is very much mixed up or different from when I last talked because of what happened to Kelsey Plum. I think that is really going to affect how well Las Vegas is going to perform, and that's a big deal for this. So how did you kind of think about placing teams?
Yeah, before yesterday, I had a 2-team tier at the top, and it was Los Angeles and Las Vegas. I think it's impossible to keep Vegas there now. So, before I kind of put too much more thought in it, I guess LA is kind of up there by themselves. For now, with the caveat that if Seattle, I don't even think they need to get fully healthy. I think even if, we just get the same Breanna Stewart and a slightly diminished Sue Bird, they can definitely be in that tier as well. So I definitely expect Los Angeles to be a legit title contender and one of the 2 best teams in the league.
Yeah, I think I also put them there. I put them as basically number 2. And that is definitely, it does depend on how well Seattle comes back, and so I'm willing to change that if Stewie and Sue are what they were in 2018. Totally willing to change this, but yeah, I see Washington. I still think Washington is really, really good. I think they'd be on the same tier for me, Washington and Los Angeles. I'm thinking Washington still is a little bit better, but I definitely see, I know your argument's going to be like, well, one lost Christy Tolliver and one gained Christy Tolliver, and I understand this, but Washington was so incredibly good last year that I still feel like I'm going to go with them for the repeat, of course, barring injuries and everything like that. That's still where I'm going with this.
We're in different places in Washington, but I don't think you want to go another hour, so we can save it for another time.
Yeah. Right. So what, the other thing is, do you want to talk about Kelsey Plum a little bit? Because I know that she got hurt and just got surgery a couple days ago, or today. I forget.
I think it was yesterday that she had successful surgery.
Yeah. Any thoughts on this?
I mean, I guess my thoughts are that it's just a bummer. I think Kelsey Plum brings a skill set to Las Vegas that none of their other teams have in terms of her pick and roll play, her sort of dynamic play creation as a perimeter player. Ben Dull had a great article released today, Friday, kind of highlighting, what they'll be missing just in terms of someone who can penetrate all the way to the rim and create for others, as well as, pull up for 3 on the pick and roll. So, defensively, they probably won't miss too much if they're getting a lot of Danielle Robinson minutes to replace her. But, I think Vegas kind of went for hoping they get significant contributions from either Jackie Young or Angel McCoughtry to needing significant contributions from both of them.
Yeah, that's a good evaluation of the situation over there. Cool. So I think we're gonna wrap it up there. I'm a tired person right now. Wow. So Stephen, why don't you tell people where they can find you, what they should do, where they should click, all these things?
Sure. Please subscribe to Eric and my podcast, Double Down WNBA. You can find that on Google Podcast Manager or on Apple Podcasts. You can follow me on Twitter at Trinkwald.
Awesome. So thanks so much, everyone, for listening to WNBA with Shay, and I will see you another time.